You're watching Standing on Guard, where we keep an eye on the enemy, of course, talking matters security today. Earlier on, I'd introduced my panelists, but if you're joining us this morning, we can actually also do that favor for you. We have Professor Noami Damba, who is the Vice Chancellor of KCA University, also is an expert on foreign policy and defense. We have with us also Ambassador Erastus Moincha, who is the former Deputy Chair of the African Union. Also, he's the Chair of Trademark East Africa. We do have with us as well Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali, who is an expert on conflict resolution and also national security matters. And we have Captain Werunga Simiyu with us as well, who is the CEO of African Institute for Security and Strategic Studies. Good morning, gentlemen, once again.
Good morning.
Right. That particular story by Seth Olale, and we've seen this spate of clashes happening in the recent past for the past 2 months. Over 10 people have died because of clashes in this country. Of course, that from Mandera, we can allude that to Shabaab, and women now, they're coming to the fore. They're saying we need now to debunk this misconception about women and how they're not really involved in the fight against terrorism as well. But Dr. Mustafa, you in that conference, just briefly, just give us some highlights about it, and then we move on to just discuss why there's a sudden flash of, and spate of violence and terrorism arising, especially in the northern frontier.
Yeah, Debarl, thank you very much. Good morning again. The Mandera Triangle, which borders Somalia and Ethiopia, is a wounded county. And I was there on Monday. What I saw, and in the discussions that we had with the governors in the frontier counties, is a very clear indication that Al-Shabaab has been more or less reigning supreme in that part of the world. While we have worked very hard and succeeded in addressing the Al-Shabaab menace in Nairobi, in Kwale, in Mombasa, parts of Lamu, it seems to me now the two areas, Boni Forest and the Mandera Triangle, is a hard nut to crack. And the reason for that, Debarl, is that perhaps the strategy that has been used there does not really involve the people there, the community. This came out very clearly. Leader after leader talked about that. The people that Al-Shabaab had captured and even released talked about this in Mandera. We had one-on-one with them. And now the government has realized that it has really to work with the local communities. We have said again and again that communities beat terror. These people come in and hide amongst the community. Now, the relationship between the military and the local population is strained, because whenever an IED is set up, and Al-Shabaab is clever, they set up an IED on a road next to a village, because they know very well that the military will go in hard and punish the villagers there, who then will turn against the Kenyan government and the military and not give out information about the Al-Shabaab. So that's one of the issues that was discussed there, and the Kenya Army was there, and it clearly said and promised that they are going to work with the local population. So we are hoping that this is something that is going to be done. The other bit that is so critical, Debarl, is a kind of an unusual a recognition, not really recognition, but people being terrorized into subservience. When Al-Shabaab comes in and they are there, they tell the local population, including the Ugas, the elders, and the sheikhs, that you don't touch them, they don't touch the local leaders. So they don't report them, and they will not hit at them, they will not punish them, they will not hit them. So in essence, what then the local leaders do is that they keep quiet, because their security is at risk. If this is something that is going to be addressed, and it was recognized in this conference, then we will see Al-Shabaab on his back foot.
Thank you. Werunga, you want to comment on the sudden spate of violence that, yes, has just erupted in the northern frontier and also other parts of the country as well?
You know, I was privileged to be retained by the Senate, and I did a research work on the problems of Mandera, Kapedo, and Laikipia.
Yes.
And Mandera's problem actually is tribal. Al-Shabaab are taking advantage of the tribal problems to infiltrate and cause havoc in Mandera. I had an opportunity to speak to the county governor. I sent my researchers to Mandera. They did all the things they needed to do, and actually I shared that report, a massive report, to the Senate Security and Foreign Relations Committee. So while we think Mandera is the most affected by these terrorism issues, when you look at the history of Mandera clashes, they actually open up to terror suspects to use the conflicts they have within the Gare, the Degodia, and the way the communities are framed, because you find when you go to Mandera, their king is actually in Ethiopia. The king of the biggest, I think, is the Gare. And when you look at the history of how the Gares went to Mandera, how they invited the other sub-clans, so it's a deep-rooted problem that does not necessarily reflect what we are seeing in Mandera. What Al-Shabaab are doing are just taking advantage of the conflicts within the sub-clans.
Yes.
And ensuring that even as they come and attack, you still have each sub-clan blaming everyone and everyone else, except looking at themselves. I had also a privilege to do one or two things with the MP for Mandera, Mandera East, I think. And we were discussing this issue, why these problems are persistent in Mandera. So yes, while I agree with what the conference is trying to do, I think, and with the due respect to Mustafa, what I recommended, and I said, unless we deeply look at the root causes of the clashes in Mandera, which start from Banisa, Ramu, Elwak. You see, Mandera, they just go to hit the installations. But the biggest problem actually are in Ramu, Banisa, and Mandera East, which is along the border. And unless we deal with the issue of clanism in Mandera, it's going to be very difficult for us to root out Al-Shabaab, because to me, they just take advantage of the differences among the locals. And number two, they have also been taking advantage of the way the military has been operating. They have not been very good to the local people,
yes, and
therefore denying them the ability for the local people to share with them the kind of information they are looking for. My take will be that now that we have a fully fledged border unit from the administration police,
yes,
and who I believe have been trained on matters of border security and control, hopefully from that, the new changes that we're going to see, then we are going to have sort of a permanent station for administration police, the border patrol unit, which I think has been augmented to 4,000 soldiers. And what I understand is that they are now going to be given fully fledged camps of about 300, 400 administration police officers to be augmented by the military, so that they are able to seriously take charge of land. You know, when you occupy land, you deny the enemy space to operate. And I think that, to me, is what needs to be done. And then, like he said, we can now look at the locals and see how they can work with these officers in a manner that they can synergize their efforts to take care of this problem. But as long as we have issues of clanism in Mandera, which is rampant, as opposed to Garissa and Wajir, Al-Shabaab will continue taking advantage of that until they take care of their own internal problems.
Right. We could also just highlight the involvement of politicians. In this case, what was happening in Marsabit, and also the court really declining to give, you know, the 21 days detention that the Director of Public Prosecution was seeking, or the DCI application was seeking. Could we just talk about it? Because it seems also politicians, they are stalking this, you know, on fomenting violence and hatred. And this has not just been the first case, I believe. I cannot just recall what was happening also in the Rift Valley recently as far as the clashes were concerned. Politicians also were involved. In Laikipia, we can remember, politicians were also involved. But detention, and then a slap on the wrist, maybe with some bails, will that really help?
Debarl, first of all, to agree with what my fellow panelists have said, who are after all gurus in this subject, and the two lessons to learn from what they have said, the security architecture, we need to look at it again to make sure that that architecture incorporates local people and that we address the real causes of these on and off clashes that we have. The second one, and this is also something that we have talked about on this fora, particularly when you look at what is happening in Somalia, Al-Shabaab is latent. And what we are doing, this high-profile kind of approach that we go and flash Al-Shabaab, they melt into society and remain there. And that brings them to the second aspect, because if the architecture is not right, the local people see the national security as them and us. You are always going to have that problem. And that is how the politicians exploit it. I think Noah has been talking about, if you look at the architecture of Israeli architecture, everybody is duty-bound to feel to be part of that security architecture. And if we go that route, really bring in our young people, bring in the local politicians, and I'm happy to see in this meeting that Mustafa went to attend, leading from the front were the governors, meaning that we are now recognizing that you cannot dispense with these elected officials on the ground. And so if we incorporate them, it will be easier for us then to have a seamless cooperation between our security forces and local politicians. Because politicians will always exploit any situation. And if they find the local population disenchanted, seeing the police as coming to oppress them or security forces, they will always speak through the politician. The politician is a mouthpiece of what he sees as an opportunity.
Right, thank you. Professor Nomi Damba.
Bryce, from global standpoint, is Vietnam War failed because of understanding the fundamental war, understanding that you have to begin with people first, and you have to convince the people to be part of your effort. And therefore, the soft power is even more stronger than the hard power. We tried the brute force in Sicily. It did not work because the people we were fighting were the people who need to provide intelligent information so we can know where the enemies are. I've been saying for a while, and I'm glad, based on what Captain Werunga is saying this morning, that they're increasing border patrol, border force, and all that kind of stuff. Unless, Bryce, and I want to repeat this, unless we secure our border with Somalia, all the efforts we have taken in Somalia will be for nothing because infiltration will continue to happen. We will have to confront these people in the street of Nairobi, Mombasa, and everywhere. And therefore, one thing that Kenya need to concentrate on is the best national interest of this country, which is to secure our border permanently. I'm glad that there is whistleblower. Blowers will be rewarded in the case of corruption. Let's reward people who are talking about so-called leaders, who are fuming this kind of continuous war to continue. We move from ethnic groups to clanism and religion differences and all that kind of thing. We are all Kenyans.
Yes.
But let's secure this country all working together.
Right, thank you.